which involves law in it, right? So I wanted to combine my knowledge of law and passion for sport, and this was the field which better suited that, and hence I wanted to do some further studies in anti-doping and specialize in it, and I was accredited as an advisor from the United Kingdom Anti-Doping Agency last year, and I currently work with the Sports Authority of India as a legal professional, and I've worked with Go Sports Foundation, Wizcraft, and Champions Tennis League before. And my favorite team sport is football, and individual sport is tennis. And my favorite club is Liverpool Football Club. I'm sure there are some fans out there. Sorry if you're a Manchester United fan. And my favorite athlete, of course, is Novak Djokovic. So this is about me, and what are we going to speak about today? This is shortly the agenda. We are going to talk about what is sport and what does integrity mean to sport, and what is the history of doping and anti-doping, and what is doping as such, and the anti-doping regime in India and worldwide. What is the anti-doping code? What are the international standards, and what does prohibited list or a therapeutic use exemption mean, what involves the doping control process, and what are the sanctions involved if suppose somebody violates the doping control measures which are put in place, and what have been the recent developments. And I'll also go ahead and give you some material which you guys can refer to later on. And in the end, we'll have a Q&A. I request all of you to please note down the questions and save it towards the end so that we can discuss in detail. So I'll take about 40 to 50 minutes of your time today. Hope that's okay. Sure, then let's move on. So I want to start off with this quote. Let me read it for you guys. So sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. Sport can create hope where once there was only despair. This is a very famous quote, and I'm sure a lot of you must have come across it. Can any of you tell me who said this and where was this said? You guys can enter your answers in the chat box. I'm having a look at it. Any guesses? Take random guesses. You may not be right. Yeah, I see one right answer from Harsh. Anybody else? Anybody who wants to guess where was this said? Okay, yeah, Harsh has guessed it right, and this quote was from Nelson Mandela. It's a very famous quote. He used this in his speech while presenting an award to Pele in Monaco during the 2000 Laureate Sports Awards. He was awarded the most inspiring athlete, so in one of those categories, and during that he said this. So this is a very powerful quote, and it what captures what sport means to him, right? Yeah, this is what he looked like when he said this quote, and this is what sport meant to Mandela. What does sport mean to you? It's important for all of us to introspect and understand what sport means to us, because once we are in the industry, we should be driven by these values, right? So I would encourage all of you to think about what sport means to you, and I'll obviously will take you guys through what does sport generally mean. Sport is celebration of basically human spirit, body, and mind. Whenever you see Rafa or Federer playing on court, what is the feeling that you get? You get inspired, right? So they are the embodiment of what sport means to us. So this is what sport in essence is, but it can also be categorized further on what it means to a developing country. So it is a tool which is used for national, social, and political gains. So this is what we are doing as a developing country through IPL. So what does sport mean for a developed country or for a country which has huge economic standards and are very stable? They use it as a tool to show superiority, right? They want to be first in everything, including economy and sport, markets, everything. So sport is a very dynamic tool. And what is the fundamental rationale of spirit of sport, right? It has certain characteristics. So these are the characteristics. It's ethics, fair play and honesty, health, excellence in performance, character and education, fun and joy, teamwork, dedication and commitment, respect for rules and laws, respect for self and other participants, courage, community, and solidarity. This is what sport brings to the table, be it for participants or uh, be it for viewers or spectators. So it embodies these many things, and hence it is a very dynamic tool and an important tool. And if for a tool like this there is no level playing field, or if the field is filled with a lot of imbalances, you can't bring out the right results. So if there are avenues for, say, cheating or anything that absolves integrity, sport will not be what we see it as today. And hence doping is contrary to sport because it gives undue advantage to whoever is practicing doping, and hence it is required for us to protect the integrity of sport. So I'll take you guys through history of doping and anti-doping. What you see here, there is a image of Zulu warriors. They were a African tribe, and as a lot of books suggest, this was the first instance when doping was practiced. Like they used to take in some potions to give them energy while fighting some wars or battles that they were involved in. So if you ask me when did doping actually start, it has been there since antiquity. So there is no actual date to it, but it is derived from the word dope, which is a Dutch word. And what is the modern Olympic evidence? So the image you see on the right-hand side is the image of the participants of the marathon event from the 1904 St. Louis Olympics. So this is where the modern history or modern evidence was taken into account. So what happened here is some of the athletes were involved in taking doses of brandy or a strychnine injection or injecting raw egg to provide them some sort of energy while participating in the marathon, for them to give them more energy to because this, I guess this was the first time when marathon was included and not a lot of athletes were sure what to do, and they took up such practices which was not in the interest of sport, and that was not encouraged. And it was later on, after this, there was obviously uh, the state-sponsored doping instance from East Germany during the First World War. They wanted to show superiority in terms of everything, and sport was one thing which the world could see, and they wanted to be first in everything. And they, the country itself, sponsored athletes into doping, and they helped them cheat. And hence, in the 1920s, it was placing restrictions was necessary. This is when some sort of regulations came into place, and so for them to bring about regulations, they had to define what is doping. So what is doping? It is use of prohibited substance or methods while you're participating or training in a particular sport or in a competition, right? So often this is seen as a blanket definition of doping, but it is not limited to this. Doping also means breaking any other anti-doping rules, which amounts to an anti-doping rule violation. So where are these anti-doping rule violations? They are in the anti-doping code, and what amounts to doping is what I'll take you through next. So there are 10 instances that counts as doping. So presence of a prohibited substance, right? So if an athlete is tested and one of the prohibited substance is seen in his bloodstream or was tested in his urine sample, then it amounts to doping, or use or attempted use of prohibited substance. So you need not necessarily use it, even if you're trying to use it, and in the process, if you're caught, it is still amounts to doping, and you'll still be liable for some kind of sanction. Evading or refusing to submit to sample collection process. So the classic example, which was recently in the news, was the Sun Young case. He's a Chinese Olympic swimmer, and he was the first ever Chinese athlete to get a gold medal in swimming. So it was a big achievement. He was quite famous among the Chinese athletes and across the world. So what did he do? So he refused to give his samples when the doping control officer turned up at his house, and that was one of the offenses that he committed. And what is evading me? There's also a very funny example when I see evading here. Recently, in one of the national athletics meets, there was this javelin thrower who threw a distance which would fetch him a gold medal. And what did he do? He also got a doppelganger along with him. And when it was time for dope testing, he sent the person who looks alike for the testing, and he ran away. So the other athletes spotted the difference, and they reported. And while this was brought to the notice of the authorities, he was seen run away across the road at the main road in Patiala, I guess. So you can't evade or refuse when your sample needs to be collected. That also amounts to doping. So failure to file whereabouts is also an offense. So what is whereabouts? Whereabouts is a system which is instituted by the anti-doping regime to ensure that athletes are available at a given place and a time for the doping control officers to go and collect samples. So you can't randomly go and knock on an athlete's door telling that it's time for you to give me your urine sample, or I want to draw your blood sample. So there needs to be a system uh, which needs to be present, and hence once the athlete gives you the details that on this day in this slot I'll be present here, that is when somebody can go and collect a sample. So if you're not giving me the details at all, then I'll not be able to test you, and hence it amounts to a violation. So tampering with the process. Again, Sun Young case is a classic example. So first he refused to submit the sample, but then after he realized the repercussions, he gave the samples, and still he was very reluctant about something. So he snatched the sample bottles from the doping control officer, and he smashed them with the hammers to destroy the bottles which contained his urine samples. So he tampered with the process. That was one of the other violations that which he was accused of, and he's also punished for. And he's got an 8-year ban for that. He can't participate in the next two Olympics as such. So possession of a prohibited substance, even if you are caught with possession, I am going around with a bag which contains one of the drugs which is prohibited in sport. So I'm not necessarily taking it, but I don't even know that that drug is present in my bag. Somebody has put it in my bag. I'm still liable for that. Right? This might seem very unfair. If any questions are popping up, please note it down. We'll discuss that. And trafficking of prohibited substance. You can't go around selling prohibited substances, and if you're caught with that, that will also amount to doping. So administration or attempted administration. So if you're not doping, but you're helping another athlete inject a substance to his body, you're still liable for some kind of punishment. And once an athlete is proven guilty of doping, if I go and associate with that athlete, or if I'm involved with his daily activities, I'm still liable for a punishment. And lastly, abating. So abating is encouraging usage. I am not doing it, but I'm telling you because you're already winning a silver medal. So if you take these substances, this will help you win a gold medal. So I'm encouraging the other person to take some prohibited substance to help him uh, get a better result by means of cheating. I'm still liable for it. So there is also this concept of strict liability when it comes to doping, right? So who is responsible for what is present in the athlete's body? So like I told you, possession, right? I don't know it's in my bag, but I am caught with that substance when a raid happens. I'm still liable. That is because it is all the anti-doping rules are governed by the strict liability principle, which means I am the only person responsible for what is in my body or what is in my possession. because it is very easy for an athlete to say, I didn't know, my coach told me to take this substance, I don't even know what this was. So I took it by trusting the coach or trusting my friend. So there have been instances of this, and to avoid such instances, strict liability has been imposed, which means if you are an athlete, you're also responsible to know what is good for you and what is not good for you. And hence, knowing this is very important. A lot of athletes tend to, when they're caught, they come to the courts and they often say, "मुझे पता ही नहीं था, किसी ने दे दिया है, किसी ने जबरदस्ती मेरे खाने पे डाल दिया था." So such excuses will not be taken. So that was about what amounts to doping and what is the anti-doping regime in the world. So World Anti-Doping Agency is the premier organization which governs anti-doping in sport worldwide. So there was this conference on World Conference on Doping, which happened in 1999 in Switzerland, Lausanne, and that is where all the participants, when I say participants, it's where the major countries, the international sporting federations, and the International Olympic Committee were participants to this conference, and they formed WADA. So in 1999 in Lausanne on 10th November, right? So it has a 36-member foundation board and a 12-member executive committee. Executive committee is the one which looks after the day-to-day activities, the implementation, and everything that is related to WADA and the anti-doping regime as such, right? And what is WADA responsible for? So WADA is responsible for publishing the World Anti-Doping Code and fostering provisions of education, providing funds for research, be it scientific or the social science aspect. They also devise the doping control processes which is required for major sporting events. And also they are supposed to institute programs for the national anti-doping agencies or the regional anti-doping agencies. So this is what WADA does. So this is the worldwide governing body. So what happens in India? So India National Anti-Doping Agency has similar functions and is directly governed by WADA. So when did NADA come into existence? It was in 2007 they were registered with WADA. So here is a very interesting observation. If you guys have seen, there's yet another declaration which you can see. So when there was body, it doesn't have any authoritarian powers, right? So hence there were certain countries which couldn't just adopt the rules made by a non-governmental agency, and there was a need for a new declaration or countries which needed to come together to adopt such rules, because without adopting the WADA rules, you can't compete uh, in an international competition. It is necessary. If you are part of the Olympic movement, then you are supposed to comply with all the WADA rules. And hence the Copenhagen Declaration was signed in 2004, and in 2007, we as a national anti-doping agency, India registered with WADA in 2007. So WADA does what bring about the National Anti-Doping Code. They're also responsible for education regarding anti-doping in India. They also bring about systems and testing procedures, mechanisms, which is required for all the national competitions which happen in India. But who does the testing and who gives the results of the testing? It is the NDTL, the National Dope Testing Laboratory, which does the testing part and the analyzing part. So the laboratory was already there in 1990. It was revamped in 2002 to comply with the necessities with WADA, and it was accredited with WADA in 2008. So there, if you guys are following the news, there is a development with regard to NDTL as well. Who can tell me what is the latest thing about NDTL in news? You can again use chat to tell me. Anybody can answer. Anybody? I'll give you about 30 seconds to take a guess.
Sir, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, sir. What do you call it? Just read in the newspaper that BCCI has come under NADA.
Yes, that is one latest development, but we are talking about National Dope Testing Laboratory.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I can't guess who answered.
So that's be fine.
Yeah, well, that's a good attempt. So thank you. That is also an interesting subject that we can speak about. Why BCCI was not under NADA until now, right? So what happened is cricket, as you know, is not part of the Olympic, right? It is not an Olympic sport. So any guesses why? Okay, let me tell you. So it is because they are not governed by the WADA rules. They have their own anti-doping regulations. So like I told you, if you're part of the Olympic movement, you're supposed to be governed by WADA rules. So if you are not under the WADA rules, you can't take part in the Olympics. So there was a lot of lobbying for cricket to be part of the games like Commonwealth Games, Asian Games, because India could win some medals there, right? Because you know how many medals we are winning right now. So for cricket to be part of it, they had to comply with the regime imposed by WADA, and hence you can see in 2022 Birmingham Commonwealth Games, women's cricket is included as a sport. So that is one latest development. Surely, thank you for bringing about that highlight. So what has happened with NDTL as such is that is the only testing laboratory in India which is accredited by WADA, but it's currently under suspension. Let us talk more about why it is under suspension in further slides. So I'll move on. So it's been an information overload, I understand. So let us break out for some time. So with so far whatever we have seen, there are some questions which you guys could answer. So it's quiz time, guys. So this is question one. Only athletes competing at the Olympics, Paralympics, and World Champions are subject to doping control. So you guys got to tell me this is if this is true or false, and
So that's false. False.
I would encourage putting it in the chat, guys. Why? I would also like to see why. Anybody wants to tell why is it false? Oh, no problem. Because there are independent agencies to look after other sports. Yeah, partly right. Any other answers, guys? I'll give you about 30 seconds. So let me give you the answer then. International athlete can be subject to doping. Yes, correct. Gaurav, you're correct. And Saib, you are also partly correct. So the answer is false. So let me tell you why. So it is not only just athletes participating in these competition, but any athletes, like I told you, who is part of a national team and is signatory to the World Anti-Doping Agency. So even an athlete who is not, but I just need to be a part of the national team. I need not be participating in any competition, whether international or a regional national competition. I'm still subject to doping control. So many countries and international federations have anti-doping programs. This means if an athlete is part of a national team, he or she may be tested either during the competition or outside the competition. So it is not just in the major competition, the doping control is in place. So time for question number 2. Analysis of urine for detection of prohibited substances or methods in sport can be performed by any laboratories with the necessary equipment. True or false, and why? Kushbu says true. Kushbu, can you tell me why do you say true? You can speak, I don't mind. You guys can unmute and speak, but one person at a time, please. Tejas says false. I would also like to see the supporting reasons for your answers, guys. You can speak up, I don't mind. Yeah, Gaurav, you're right. You're partly right again. Any more answers? So I'll give you 30 more seconds, guys, to shoot in answers. Just take a guess. You need not be right. Harsh, your answer is right, but your reason is not right. Cool. The answer is false, and I'll tell you why. Because not any laboratory can test those samples collected, right? It is needs to be accredited with WADA. Like we saw, our national dope testing laboratory was accredited with WADA in 2008. So if any laboratory starts testing, so there'll be no control for the regime on what kind of a laboratory is testing. Are they meeting the standards that is required for testing? So as an athlete, it'll be easy for me to go to any laboratory. Bolo, my uncle has a laboratory. I'll go there and tell, please give me a report which would not which would show that I'm not doped, right? So things like that will be possible. Hence, only the accredited laboratories with the World Anti-Doping Agencies can perform testing and give out the results for analysis of the samples, be it urine or blood sample. There is also testing of breath that happens in some cases. So that's about quiz. It's time to move on. We'll now speak about World Anti-Doping Code. So we saw that WADA is responsible for a few things, right? They'll have to formulate the World Anti-Doping Code, which acts as a framework. It gives out policies, rules, and regulations in conjunction with the international standards that each national anti-doping agency needs to follow and formulate further. So it acts as a regulatory body here. So World Anti-Doping Agency does not directly control what the athlete does. So it delegates the power to each national anti-doping agencies or the regional anti-doping agencies, which has taken up the responsibility for clean sport in that respective region or a country, right? So they also help each country or NADA vet their codes and make sure that it is in terms of the framework which is already given by the World Anti-Doping Agency. So that is what the code is. So it is like the constitution which governs a particular country. The whole anti-doping regime is governed by this code, and whatever happens in anti-doping needs to be in consonance with this code. So I mentioned there are international standards, right? What are the standards? There are technical and operational areas within the anti-doping program. There are about 6 areas as such, which are the prohibited list, the testing and investigation areas, laboratories, therapeutic use exemptions, protection of privacy, and code compliance by signatories. So there needs to be rules and regulations which are standardized. So what you can call these international standards are the sub rules which are to the World Anti-Doping Code. So each area is identified that requires regulation, and then they are further regulated with these standards, right? So we spoke that the NDTL is suspended right now. So one of the reasons NDTL is suspended because it is not in consonance with the international standards which are given for laboratories by the WADA, right? So hence, at several instances, it was identified by WADA and it was brought to the notice of NADA and the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sport, but then it still didn't bother correcting or regulating it. There were certain aspects which was not meeting the international standards, and despite of several warnings, the laboratory went about with its usual operations, and hence they were suspended for a period of 6 months in August 2019, and the suspension was supposed to end in February, but we'll see later what is the current situation with that. So every signatory needs to be in compliance with the international standards. So if suppose I am collecting a sample from the athlete, so uh, it should be in the scope of the international standards, which is given by the World Anti-Doping Agency. If it is not, then it is the violation of rights of an athlete. So the most important international standard, which we'll further talk about, is the prohibited list. And this is what it looks like. So this is a list which contains all the prohibited substances and methods. So the World Anti-Doping Agency has a scientific committee which puts together this list every year, taking into considerations what kind of substances enhance the sporting performance for athletes, and where should it be banned, whether it should be banned in competition or out of competition, or whether these substances are relevant only for certain sports. They take all these into consideration and publish this list every year. So it is, like I told you, categorized for in competition, out of competition, and for particular sports. So let me give you an example here for why such categorization is required, right? So when we speak about particular sport, for example, uh, alcohol is not uh, banned in all kinds of sport. It is only banned in a particular kind of sports, in like motorsport, or which is in airborne sports, or which requires uh, the concentration of the mind. That is where the sports of those nature, alcohol is banned. And also cannabis is banned similarly in similar kinds of sport. So there is a need for categorization to identify what kinds of substances can be banned in what kind of sport. And substances are also further classified it as steroids, stimulants, and substances methods which can influence gene doping. So I'm sure all of you must know what is steroids, right? It is used to bulk up. You would have seen your gym mates using it to bulk up, or it is basically used to treat your muscle or an injury related to the muscle. So it does the treatment unnaturally, and hence there is a classification, and a lot of athletes end up taking it. And you can see this practice in kind of sports which requires natural strength, like athletics, which is purely driven by human body's capacity. So that is when the athlete will feel the need of taking steroids to help them stay uh, as fit as possible for all the performances. And stimulants are some things which help you perform better. For example, stimulants are substances which can help you breathe better, which can help your blood circulation improve. So a classic example for stimulant is terbutaline. You guys must have heard of the Prithvi Shaw story, which came about last year, right? So he was banned for a particular time for taking, cough syrup. So there are technicalities to it, but that substance was a stimulant. And gene doping is as simple as, it's not as simple as that, but if you want to know what is gene doping, it is replacing a faulty gene within your system with a gene which is created in a laboratory to fix the problem. Because human body is entirely made up of genes, right? And your characteristics are driven by the genes. If suppose our parents had a particular disease, if it is brought down to us, it can be an impediment to my sporting performance. So there are techniques to change that, and gene doping is an emerging practice which has come about and is being fought in the anti-doping field. So for any substance or method to be a part of the prohibited list, it should meet the two out of these three criteria which is mentioned here. It should either be performance enhancing, or it should be a threat to the athlete, or it should be violative of the spirit of sport. That is when a substance can come into this list, and athletes will not be able to use those substances legitimately for if they want to take part in any sport. So that's about prohibited list. And TUE is the therapeutic use exemption of the substances which are contained in the prohibited list. So let us say I have a genuine ailment which I want a treatment for, but I can be treated for that ailment only with a substance which is present in the prohibited list. So what can I do? So should I suffer from the injury? Should I die? Should I not take that substance because it is already in the prohibited list? No, definitely not. But there are exemptions which can be granted and which is brought about in the anti-doping code in the form of therapeutic use exemption. So if I require a particular substance for a genuine treatment, then I can take it, but I'll need to have a therapeutic use exemption certificate to take such substance in committee. And they have listed this criteria here, which which are these four criteria. So all four of these, if all four of these criteria are not met, then athlete will not be granted with a TUE. So this talks about, so I'm talking about, see, I need a TUE, I need to apply for a TUE even before I'm getting treated for something. So if there is an emergency, I can't sit and wait for the TUE to come to me and then get the treatment, right? So there are provisions for getting this exemption on a retroactive basis. So first I can go in for the treatment and then take in a TUE retroactively. Provisions are there for that as well. So it is important for us to know this subject because a lot of athletes don't know. So they're often scared when they go to the doctors. They're like, I'm an athlete, but I don't know what substance needs to be taken, what substance I can't take. But we as sports professionals, we can educate them on aspects like TUE and tell them when it can be used strategically for a genuine treatment. Although it can be used for cheating, there are several instances. So you guys must have heard about Simone Biles. So there is a rumor that she's been taking a particular substance for a long time, and she has a TUE for it, which is being granted for years together. Right? So it is still under speculation, but it can be used for cheating like this. So that's about TUE. So how is doping fought? So there is a particular doping control mechanism.
So I have a question regarding this thing, TUE.
TUE, right? So do you want to note it down and we can discuss this at the end?
Yeah, no problem, sir.
Sure. Thank you. So how is doping fought? There is a 5-phase procedure for which is in place for doping control process, and there is a very wonderful video which is put together by WADA. I would invite your attention towards the video that I'll play right now. And this is a very technical subject, guys. So if you are not very attentive, you'll miss out a lot of things. So I request all of you to be attentive and watch this video. Just give me a second. Can you see my screen, which is about to play a video?
Yes.
Thank you. So,
Doping control is an essential part of anti-doping programs to promote and protect the integrity of sport and the health of athletes. Testing is carried out in accordance with the World Anti-Doping Code and a series of international standards. Hi, I am a doping control officer, also known as a DCO. I play a major role in protecting your rights in the doping control process, which consists of 5 phases. Athlete selection, athlete notification, sample collection, sample analysis, and results management. How can you be selected for testing? Testing can be conducted in 2 situations: in competition and out of competition. For in-competition testing, the selection may occur in a number of ways, including by random selection, based on finishing position, or by being targeted for a particular reason. For out-of-competition testing, you may be tested anytime, anywhere, with no advance notice. If you have been identified in a registered testing pool, you will be required to provide whereabouts information. You may be tested at home, at your training location, or other relevant locations. How will you be notified? The notification process is the same for both in and out of competition testing. If you are selected for testing, I will show you my DCO accreditation to demonstrate that I am authorized to conduct testing. I will also explain your rights and responsibilities in the doping control process and ask you to sign a form. Once you have been notified, you must report immediately to the doping control station. You may request a delay for a valid reason, such as you are taking part in a medal ceremony, you must attend a press conference, you require medical treatment. Upon notification, a DCO or chaperone will stay at your side at all times until the testing process has been completed. What is the sample collection process? During this process, you also have specific rights, such as having a representative with you, as well as certain responsibilities. I will first ask you for a valid photo ID to confirm your identity. You will be asked to provide 1 or more urine samples and/or blood samples. When you are ready to provide a urine sample, a doping control official of the same gender as you will witness the passing of the sample and will stay with you until you provide a sample that meets all requirements. You will then be asked to divide the urine sample into B and A bottles and then seal them. Throughout the process, you will be the only one to handle the sample collection equipment, unless you require assistance. Finally, you will be asked to review and sign the doping control form. The samples and a copy of the form that does not disclose your identity will be sent to a WADA-accredited laboratory, while the other copies will go to the relevant anti-doping organizations. A copy of the form will also be provided to you. How are the samples analyzed? Once your A sample arrives at the laboratory, it will be opened and analyzed. The B sample will be securely stored. Should the A sample reveal an adverse analytical finding, the B sample will be analyzed to confirm the result. How are the results managed? The lab will report the results to the anti-doping organization responsible for results management. A copy will be sent to WADA to ensure the accountability of the process. In the event of an adverse analytical finding, your rights include requesting and attending the B sample analysis within set deadlines, a fair hearing, and the right to an appeal. As an essential deterrent, a standard doping control process across all countries helps protect the right of athletes to compete on a level playing field in the true spirit of sport.
So that was the video explaining the doping control process. Let's get back to the presentation. Yeah, can you see my screen again?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So that video pretty much explains how the samples are collected, so when it can be collected, how the athletes will be notified, and how the athletes are selected, and how the samples are analyzed, and how the results are given. So it's a 5-minute video, but in entirety, if you see in reality, this procedure takes about like more than 30 days. So it's very well summarized by WADA, and that video was made for athletes to also know their rights, right? So there are crucial aspects that was brought about in the video. For example, when you see the video said that you are what you have the right to have a representative while your sample is being collected. So not a lot of athletes know that. So when you see a lot of these athletes come from a very humble backgrounds, and they'll not know what the procedure is. So it is also not fair to say that all the doping control officers are fair and square and they treat all the athletes properly, right? So doping control officers are also supposed to educate the athletes about what their rights are, but that doesn't happen in India because the doping control officers, they don't know the rights themselves. So it has a lot of technicalities. For example, I can't just refuse to submit a sample after I've won a medal in an international competition. So I can only, there are only few reasons that I can avoid a sample collection, right? So it can be only legitimate reasons. Only if I have to go for the medal ceremony, or if I have a media briefing session, or I have an injury which needs to be treated, I can go, I can take those as exemptions, but not all athletes will know that I can use that as an exemption. For example, I'm injured, I want to be treated, but then I'm scared that if I don't give my sample, I might be accused of doping. So it is important for us to know these rights, and so that we can educate the athletes further. So education is a very crucial aspect when it comes to anti-doping in sport, because what happens generally is that you're not educating the athlete, but you're punishing them for something that they're doing most of the times intentionally, but sometimes they're doing it as an act of inadvertence. They genuinely didn't know that a particular substance was banned or not, because a prohibited list is a very technical document. Even if you take it to the doctor, they will take time to analyze the document and see what kind of substance is prohibited. And if you are giving such a list to the athlete to see, it is your responsibility, go through the list and only then you can take medicines. It is difficult for them. So as sports management professionals, it is important for us to do some research about this, and especially if you're going into the field of athlete management after this. So you'll need to know this information to educate your athletes further. So so if you guys are interested in that, I would encourage you to do some further study. I'll also guide you on how you can do those things. So moving on, I'll talk about what are the sanctions, right? So by sanctions, I mean, what are the punishments? What can, if suppose I'm accused of doping, my sample is collected and my A samples returns with an adverse analytical finding, which means there is a presence of a prohibited substance in my sample that was collected. So what are the kind of punishments that can be imposed on the athletes for this reason? So there are basically, in simple terms, can be categorized into two categories. It's suspension for 2 years and suspension for 4 years. So what are the instances in which an athlete can be suspended for 2 years or for 4 years? So for the sake of sanctioning for a rule violation, the prohibited list is also further categorized into the substances which are specified and non-specified. So non-specified substances are substances like steroids, which you are taking intentionally to enhance your performance. So in those cases, when intention is very clear, then you get a clear 4-year ban, right? From you can't participate in any competitions. So you just can't. It doesn't mean that I'm suspended in India. I'll go to other country. I'll go represent another country and participate. You still can't do that. So you're just banned from all kinds of sports. So a lot of athletes lose out on opportunities. So as athletes, they work towards a goal. So their goal might be different. Because somebody wants a Commonwealth gold, somebody wants an Asian Games gold, somebody wants a Olympic gold. So they'll be deprived of all these opportunities that they've been working for because of one stupid mistake, and they get a ban and they lose the entire career. So in what instances do they get a 2-year ban? So when there are chances that you can prove that you didn't have an intention for doping, right? So that is when you take the specified substances. So specified substances are substances which are often available like over the counter in a pharmacy. You can take a prescription and avail these medicines, right? So terbutaline was one such medicine which Prithvi Shaw consumed and was banned for a particular period. So at that point in time, BCCI was not under NADA. So he was given a punishment which was according to the BCCI anti-doping rules, which was not 2 years. So, and it was the time also when there was discussions about how BCCI could come under the anti-doping regime, which is already established for all kinds of sports. So who provides these sanctions, right? Who is the authority that can sanction the athletes? So at a national level, it is the anti-doping disciplinary panel. So as soon as a adverse analytical finding is seen, so the reports are sent to the disciplinary panel and the athletes are given a fair hearing chance. So it is just not that, so your sample is tested positive, so here you go with a 2-year suspension or a 4-year suspension. So athletes also need to be given a right to defend themselves, right? So if suppose they agree to it, and a provisional suspension will be granted, which means they are suspended from the time the sample was collected, and that suspension can be later adjusted with a 2-year ban. This is very crucial because a lot of athletes they would have worked for a goal, and the end of suspension means that they could take part in particular competitions after the ban period, right? Now, a classic example is that the Olympics is postponed. A lot of athletes whose anti-doping suspensions were continuing till June or July this year could not have participated if the Olympics happened this year. But now that the Olympics are postponed, all these athletes who will come out of suspension get 1 year to prepare for the Olympics, and they can take part. They first of all have to qualify, and then they can take part. So there are repercussions and instances like this of anti-doping. So if suppose I am not satisfied with the kind of hearing or the procedure or the decision given by the disciplinary panel, I can further appeal it to the appeal panel. So that is my second step of recourse available to make sure that I'm given a fair hearing and all the sanctions given are legitimate and it is in compliance with the rules. So if I'm still not happy and I still get a suspension, I can either appeal it to the Court of Arbitration, which is in Switzerland, and that is like the Supreme Court for sport in India. So that is the Supreme Court worldwide, which regulates everything related to sport, right? So it is not just the athlete who can appeal. It is, for example, WADA can also appeal here. So we saw certain responsibilities of WADA, right? So they formulate the code, they provide education, they provide funds for research, etc., etc. But what is WADA not responsible for? WADA is not responsible for testing of these samples or in the sanctioning procedure, but WADA has a special power here. For example, WADA feels that the National Anti-Doping Agency has some kind of bias and has not given the right sanction. They can appeal the case to CAS as well. It is not settled that at the level of anti-doping appeal panel, the case is settled. So there are also other mechanisms through which athletes can get a reduction in sentence, right? So if suppose I'm handed over a 4-year suspension for taking in steroid in athletics, so the panel here will give you options that see if you can help me identify other athletes who practice doping, or if you can help me identify any traffickers who are athletes who are selling dope substances in your hostels or anywhere. uh, I can give you a reduction. So athletes end up getting reduction from 4 year, they get 1 year reduced if they provide something called as a substantial assistance, right? So why is this concept present? Because the main aim for WADA or NADA is to have a level playing field. So it cannot achieve by just punishing one athlete. The root needs to be treated, and they want to eliminate doping from the source itself. Hence, there is such a mechanism for them to provide substantial assistance and then get a reduction in sentence. I guess it's before we talk about major recent developments, we are reaching the end of the presentation. So I can take in questions now. So whoever has a question can, with whatever
Yes, sir.
happened so far.
Actually, sir, just wanted to know one of those situations.
So guys, I would like to know your name and then your question, because I can't see everyone here.
Yeah, my name is Saib.
Hi, Sai, tell me.
So there are situations where, I mean, for recovery, you need to have some steroids in order to, get to that level of competition, because you're still not recovered because you had some damage, or, getting, some post surgeries or something like that. So what happens during such situations?
So yeah, you mean recovering from for example, injury which is treated, right? So
That's right.
For the athlete to have been for example, he undergoes an operation. So there are a lot of prohibited substances that can be injected. So these substances cannot be injected if there are no TUEs availed from the WADA or NADA. So it is necessary for the athlete to take TUE and then only take in the substances. Although it's necessary, like I told you, if it is an emergency, they can later on apply for the TUE and then make sure that they have followed the due procedure which is required.
Right. Thank you.
I hope I cleared that out.
Yes, sir.
Any other question, guys?
Hello.
No further questions? Can we go ahead?
Hello.
I guess we have one question on the chat.
Okay, is this Kunal or Sandesh?
This is me, Sandesh. But the question is from Harsh. So he's asking, how before is the athlete informed about his test?
Just a second, let me see the chat. So so this happens like I told you. Harsh, I'll answer your question first. I guess Kunal also has a question. Kunal, by the time you can type in your question or you can ask it yourself. So Harsh, testing happens in two instances, right? So there is out of competition testing and in competition testing. So in out of competition testing, testing can happen only through the time slots which are given by the athletes by filling in the whereabouts information. So athletes need to give in a 1 hour slot each day for 1 quarter from Jan to March, where the testing officers can come in and collect the sample, right? So in that case, the athlete already knows at what time the athlete can be tested. So that is your answer for out of competition testing. And in competition testing, so who are tested generally in competition? So majorly it will be the medalists or medal prospects. So like you saw in the video, there is something called as an athlete notification. So the doping control officer can randomly go and ask this athlete that we are here to collect your sample, and the athlete needs to comply with it. So the doping control officer needs to show his identification and also needs to check the athlete's identification and then collect sample and then go about with the rest of the procedure. So that is how the notification process works. So so these are certain rules, but an athlete can be tested whenever and wherever, irrespective of whether they are in the registered testing pool or whether they are competing in an international competition. But that happens very rarely in a real case scenario. So did that answer your question? Yeah. So I guess Gaurav has a question. How to become an anti-doping officer and what is the scope in India if I decide to study anti-doping? See, so there's nothing called as an anti-doping officer. There are doping control officers. So these officers are the one who are responsible for sample collections in competition and out of competition. So these doping control officers are generally the ones who have studied pharmacology or have some kind of a science background. So they get a formal training from NADA. There are openings which will come about which NADA advertises, and the qualifications are given there of what is required, and then you can go about to apply if you meet those qualifications. But it is not only that. So if you want to work in the anti-doping field, there are also a lot of administrative opportunity, right? NADA, like any other organization, has its administrative strength. So you can work in the anti-doping field if you don't have a technical education. For example, if you're not a lawyer, if you're not a doctor, or if you don't have a pharmaceutical background, you can still work in the anti-doping administration as such. And I guess in NADA there are more than 50 to 100 employees right now who are working towards the anti-doping curbing in India. Yeah, Gaurav, I guess I answered your question there. And then Shubham has a question. What if player getting falsely accused of doping just to track the source? What can he or she do for that? Shubham, I didn't quite get your question. You can speak up and ask the question. Shubham, are you there? Sandesh, can they unmute and
Yes,
speak?
sir.
Yes, Shubham, I didn't
Hello.
understand your question. Can you elaborate a bit, please?
Sir, are there any case that if a player has been falsely accused just to track the source from where this doping is happening? The last in the last which you explained. So I'm confused about it.
Yeah, see, I seem to get you there. So generally that doesn't happen. Just for catching the other cheaters, athlete will not be falsely accused. But there are instances of sabotage. What happens? So what happens generally is that in a particular sport, let us say weightlifting, the national camp for weightlifting happens in a particular space. So there are a lot of athletes who are training there, right? So say I have a rift with one of the athletes, and it is just like how a college fight happens between two guys. So I want only bad things for him to happen. So what happens is, so this athlete does a conspiracy with a set of other athletes and coaches, and will mix some kind of prohibited substance in the athlete's food. So these kind of sabotages will happen. In that cases, if the athlete can prove how it has happened, because of the concept of strict liability, that athlete did not really intend to take a substance, but it was accidentally in his meal or whatever without his knowledge, then a reduced sentence will be given. But end of the day, if substance is present in your body, you are responsible for it. So for example, what we used to do, so when I used to work in Go Sports Foundation, we used to manage about more than 120 athletes, right? So we used to go to the extent of providing them with their private water filters. So what happened is, at one instance, there were some substances just put in the water tank, the overhead tank of the national camp hostel. So some set of athletes didn't drink water for some time. So athletes go to that extent to protect themselves from being falsely accused. So this is a real-time example for you to give you the picture. Shubham, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
If you have a follow-up, please don't hesitate. So after Shubham,
Hi, sir. Pranay here.
Pranay, yes. Hi, Pranay.
Can you hear me? Yes, sir. Just typed out the question. So my question is just a situation I wanted, that could happen possibly. So I just want to ask, like, in case an athlete is found guilty of possession of any banned substance,
Okay.
and that they have found out the banned substance in one of their bags or belongings just before the competition, and they have been, found that the athlete has been caught, and then the competition happening next day or something. So I'm sure the agency won't allow the athlete to participate, right, in the competition. So, but later on, after the competition is over, be it the Olympics or whatever athletic meet, later they found that in fact it was like a sabotage situation. Like somebody else planted the the banned substance, and the athlete was actually found innocent. So how was the athlete compensated, right? Because he loses years of practice and he was not able to take part in the competition also.
Yes. I get your question. So
Yes,
exactly for situations like this, the concept of strict liability has been in place. So although I know it's unfair that it was put in as a sabotage, but then athlete is never stopped from competing. If you've seen instances in what happened in the 2012 Olympics is, so a lot of athletes lost their medals that they've won later on. So what will happen is they'll be stripped out of the achievement that they've been given, and their medals will be taken back, and whoever had won a bronze medal will win the silver medal, because the silver medal athlete was accused of doping and it was proved. So it is not just the acquisition that is important. It is, like I told you, it is the trial procedure and what the panel decides that is important.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So they'll just not be straight away stopped.
All right.
Hello, sir. Rishikesh here.
Hi, Rishikesh. Tell me.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, like, sometimes what happens is, like, I'll give you an instance.
Can you be a bit louder, please? Have the microphone.
Hello.
Yeah.
So sometimes what happens is, like, I'll give you an instance, like on 4th or 6th March of 2018, during a UEFA Champions League game. It was again Madrid versus PSG. So Ronaldo, who actually played very well in that game, so their team won. So, but suddenly, like during the celebration, he was obviously happy, like the way he performed. But suddenly, the doping team came and they just took him for for testing whether he has taken any drugs or no, which he hadn't. But and he was very furious because obviously his game was subjected because he played so good. So that's why there were concerns like maybe he must have been on drugs, but he was not. So sometimes in those cases, the player's games is questioned, and sometimes he gets hurted because the way he is looked upon, just because he performed so well at that age. So that's why he is being charged with drugs. So what to do during such situations, sir?
So see, anti-doping is not about the emotions, right? So it is about following the rules. So the officers who came in and who pulled him out of in the middle of celebration, they were totally within the rights to pull out Ronaldo to make sure that. So let us say, I'll give you a hypothetical situation. If suppose he was tested for a substance, what would be the case? You would have accused the officers for not taking the right steps, and he has won the league and he single-handedly performed so well and won the Champions League in the final against PSG. You would have accused the officers the other way around. So here the officers was performing their duties totally within their rights. So you can't consider the emotion into picture here. So like the video explained to you, there are only a few legitimate reasons due to which you can avoid giving your samples, right? So celebration is definitely not one of them. Celebration is not a legitimate reason for you to avoid giving you the sample. So if suppose he was injured and he had to see the doctor, definitely the officers would have allowed him to go visit the doctor first.
So sorry, sir, but I'm just not talking about celebration because he was performing because in Champions League he was like usually performing very well even before those games. He scored a hat trick and all. So on particular on that game, that's why I was asking because particular that game when they won and when he was like he was furious after that. Obviously he was, and so that's why I asked you that question. Nothing else, sir.
Yeah, so yeah, there was no reason for him to be furious there. He, being a renowned athlete, knowing all the procedures really well, I would say it was if he was furious, then it was not in the right spirit. So you expect an athlete of that stature to be a role model to the other
Yes,
athletes,
sir.
right? If
Yes,
he
sir.
is furious, all the other junior footballers will be like, Ronaldo was furious, even I'll be furious. But in essence, they are just following rules there. So sport, like I told you, for ensuring to provide a level playing field, steps like these needs to be taken, irrespective of whether it is Ronaldo or whether it is Sunil Chhetri.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any more questions, guys?
Yes, sir. We have question from Ansh and even from Tejas over the chat.
Just a second. I'm trying to solve. Hansh, would you mind asking the question? There are a lot of questions here.
Yes, sir. 1 minute. So I was hello. You can hear me, sir? Hello.
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah. So which sports do allow alcohol intake?
So there is no list for sports which allow alcohol intake, but there is a list for sports which does not allow alcohol intake. So it is present in the prohibited list as such. So if you study the prohibited list, so it is categorized very systematically. So when I say alcohol, they identify certain category what characteristics of sport which alcohol can be acted as performance enhancing. In those kinds of sport, it can be prohibited. So if you want me to tell the kind of sport alcohol is prohibited in, then we might have to open the prohibited list. I guess I'll give that as an exercise to you. You can maybe...
So there is no a limit, right? That an athlete like a cricketer or a footballer or a tennis player can have only this much amount of alcohol, before a game or whatever. Is there a
yes,
restriction?
There are limits prescribed. So for every drug, if you go into technicality, there is something called as a half-life. So if you're taking something which cannot be detected at all in your sample, then you're safe.
Okay.
So again, that is only a pharmacologist can tell you. So that is the area of study done by a pharmacologist, right? So what drug stays in your body for how much time? There is a detailed study about that, and a lot of athletes use this method as well. So they very technically do it. So they stop taking the substances just 1 month before the competition, and they make sure everything is flushed out. So that is why out of competition testing is necessary. So if you are randomly not conducting tests, then it means that you are allowing the athletes to there is room for cheating there, right? So this is seen as to take advantage of loopholes, but whereas it should be seen as to provide to get rid of all the imbalances and providing a level playing field. For example, what is happening right now in the given situation, also because of the pandemic or because of the lockdown, the doping control officers cannot go and do this random test which they do usually. So there are chances for athletes to dope, but in what if the athletes have the resources, they can do it. But right now, because everything is locked down, they'll also not be able to find this prohibited substance. But if they've already procured it and they have it in their possession, they can do this doping and they can do the training. So WADA has also given a clarification regarding that as well right now. So what is the situation now? If there is a lockdown, definitely they can't test. But whereas there is something called as an athlete biological passport. So what happens is when athlete blood samples are collected and are analyzed over a period of time. So if there is any change in the blood structure. So there is a system which can tell whether this athlete has taken in any substances. So there are mechanisms which are there which can still identify cheaters even though they go to a particular extent.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
No problem. Do we have time to take more questions, Sandesh?
So we can continue with the PPT, like the presentation.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
So we were at sanctions, and then what are the major recent developments? So you guys would have definitely seen this in the news. The entire Russian contingent is banned from taking part in sport, right? For a period of 4 years. They can't compete under the national flag of Russia. And starting from this year, 4-year period was imposed on them. Why? Because there was, in 2014, in the Winter Olympics in Sochi, Russia had a very strategic state-sponsored doping instance. And it was brought about, and it took about 4 years for that to be proved. And in 2019, they were, I guess, in 2020 itself, in the early 2020s, they were imposed a 4-year ban. So you will not see Russia in any major competitions in the next 4 years, be it Champions League or be it Olympics, right? So all these things. And right now, the anti-doping regime is governed by the 2015 code. So like you know, any law requires updation, right? It is a dynamic environment. So there'll be new processes which the athletes will see, or the sports scientists will see, to cheat. So hence, the law keeps evolving, and right now the 2021 code is about to be enforced from 2021, and right now it is published on the World Anti-Doping Agency website. So if anybody is interested, you guys can go see it and see what are the major differences there from now and the future code. And we were talking about NDTL being suspended. So it was a 6-month suspension, and they were supposed to prove to WADA that all the irregularities that were there. Sorry, somebody is speaking. Somebody has something there.
Oh, that was by mistake. I have mute her.
Okay, so they still remain suspended because we have still not proved that we are in consonance with all the international standards that are required for laboratories, and hence it's remained suspended. So it's natural that you guys might get a question: if NDTL is suspended, who's analyzing all the samples right now? So NADA is sending all the samples to the Qatar laboratory, the accredited laboratory from WADA there. They have a partnership, and hence they are testing. And obviously there is a lot of cost incurred for that, due to which NADA cannot analyze a lot of samples, and random testings are not happening, and NADA is also being accused of that. So it is because of the cost implication. They'll have to do everything within the budget which is allocated to them. The ministry is also discussing to revamp the budget which is allotted to NADA for these reasons, and those are the recent developments. And for anyone who's further interested in this topic, who wants to dwell more into it or want to become an expert in this topic, obviously the WADA website has a wonderful educational platform, and has all the resources for you to know about doping, and for you to help other athletes to prevent from doping and such practices, or for a doctor to know what kind of medications can be given to an athlete. So everything is covered in this website, so you can always visit the website, and you can there is the resources section which will help you with any information that is required, right? And there is also this handbook which I had created to educate athletes on what is anti-doping, on all the things to know about anti-doping. It is on this website called sportslaw.in. So you guys can go refer that book, and if you come across any athlete, maybe you can give a link of this book to those athletes, and they can refer to it and refrain from doping, and they will know what actually it is. Because this being a very technical subject, not a lot of athletes know about this. And there are a lot of educational programs that NADA does, which I don't know how effective is, but still athletes are involved in doping. So unless there are effective educational workshops that is happening, I guess we'll still see athletes going about doping and cheating, trying to cheat the process. This is one material which you can look at. And there is this documentary on Netflix called Icarus. So this gives you the story of why Russia is banned right now from international sports. So if you guys are have time and are interested, I would recommend this is a must-watch documentary, and it's on Netflix. You guys can watch it. And there is this certification also, certificate course which is provided by WADA. If you want to become a technical expert and you want to know more about this, you can do that course as well. So that's about it, guys. Thank you. You can, those are my coordinates. You can ping me on LinkedIn, or you can send me an email if you have any further questions. And I've put in this image because this was awarded as the sporting moment of 2 decades by Laureus. So a lot of you must have heard about this or read about this. So I love this image. This was a gesture to thank everyone who were patient enough to listen today. And I guess you learned the technicalities of this subject. If you any closing comments that you guys have, I'd be happy to take. Anything, guys?
Okay.
If not, we can continue.
So anyone have like any more doubts, they can mail you, right?
Any feedbacks, comments, I'd be happy to take that. I
Okay.
have about 2 minutes that I can give you.
Okay. It was such a wonderful like session.
I hope it was not boring. It was not an overload of information. If not, that is why I would like to hear from you guys if I can improve on any aspects. If I need to talk more about any of these aspects, please let me know. Or if you need any clarification, please feel free. So if everyone liked this session, can I see a thumbs up from all of you guys? I cannot see you guys at all. Thank you, thank you. It was a good time from spending with all of you guys. So feel free to get in touch. Thank you again, Mayan Wood, for giving me this opportunity to speak to everyone about this topic. So all the best, guys. So
thank you, sir.
On the field, I hope you're helping athletes in the right manner and with the right things. See you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.